I have to say that I'm not as concerned as Dr. David Jacobs and Bud Hopkins, but quite recently they've been showing their fear, their worry, their concern that this agenda is not what we think it is. They are almost saying that they feel that at any time these beings are going to come here, drop off all the hybrids and take over the planet. Now, I mean, how do we, in this interview, put over to people that it is not like that? It is not that concern.
Okay, again, we're going to come from my scope,
yeah,
at 1 to 3 degrees.
Right.
I take at face value what I've experienced for many years, and I myself had to evolve to a point to be able to understand what I'm communicating, and I'll do my best with it. Face-to-face contact has been, we're not here to take over, we're not here to eliminate you as a human being, we're not anxious to put anything out here to populate the planet so you can go away, we're anxious to see you evolve. Again, these are just insurance policies, but I have tremendous respect for Hopkins and Jacobs' work because they have a logical, scientific point of view. Perhaps they're expressing emotional concerns coming from the data that they have received, because there's nothing pleasant about a lot of the procedures that the extraterrestrials put people through. A lot of the memory is taken away so they're not traumatized. Again, this is part of the abduction scenario, and it's just one part of it, and it is, in my view, coming from many years of experience and watching their handiwork, it's a positive thing that they're doing. But when you look at it scientifically, some of these things are scary, and people are scared, and then they're traumatized, and they come back and say, oh, this is awful, that's awful, and then they interview another person, and they're saying this is awful and that's awful. So they're concluding things that I don't agree with.
Well, because, I mean, people are focusing and highlighting the anal probing and the semen extraction. It's all part of the process, but it becomes sensational because it's not something that's generally discussed, not something that generally happens in this world. So when people focus on those procedures, I think it makes the whole abduction scenario quite frightening. What endorses, perpetuates fear.
Well,
but it's not about that.
No, I mean, some of these things are scary. And backing up a little bit, if you had absolutely no experience in the medical field, and you were in you saw a trauma situation, and medical practitioners come in there and doing their handiwork, well, you would see blood and guts and emergency procedures. Right. That would, if you've never seen it before, all you would say is, "This, oh, I got abducted," and I was in total fear. It's the worst thing I ever saw. These are monsters. I don't know what they're doing. Right. And then you go away from the scene without having any other feedback to evolve it. And I think it's more or less like that, only on a larger scope. I'm not naive here, because I'm taking things in for many years, and I feel pretty certain from experience that's what they want to see, and that's what I believe too. Also, the keepers. They refer to themselves as the keepers.
Right.
Collect and preserve every form of life that there is on this planet. From every seed, seedling, trees, all biological material, ova, eggs. So they're preservers of these things also. Again, the push is for them so we can evolve and join.
Okay, Jim, can you tell us whether you know if it's the Greys, if the Greys are working for the reptilians, if there's a pecking order here, would you know?
Well, I can only, again, talk about for myself. Better than 90% of my interactions, abductions, whatever you wish, in many years have involved Greys, what are commonly referred to as Greys. And in the last 6-7 years, I've had some experience with what are commonly referred to as reptilians. I can't say, because I was passed along that way, that there's a pecking order, because the Greys were the one that worked with me to bring me to a point where I can interact with these beings, and now I'm here with the bosses, so to speak. So I can't really find a pecking order there, but I can tell you there's some stark differences. The Greys express little to no emotions. The Greys do not like to answer questions. The Greys only give you enough they give you the information they want you to know, and they're not very open to gain any other information from them. That is just the nature of the animal, so to speak. And that is something I just know to be so, for having so many, many years of interactions and many, many abductions. On the other side of the coin, interactions with the reptilians, that's quite a different story. They express emotion. They are okay with you asking them questions and them responding to a question. They have feelings. They are more prone to give you a futuristic view of what they see is going on, what has happened, a historical view, and also to advise on where we should go, nudge and push on where the human species should go so we can join them. So do I call that a pecking order necessarily? No. It's just that I can interact a little at a more human level with the reptilians. Not to say that I don't have that now, because my relationship with the Greys has so much evolved from the trauma and how awful and everything like that to a working relationship with them.
Okay, so we've discussed the spirituality. Let's just briefly discuss the technology of the extraterrestrials. So, especially with regard to time travel, interdimensional activities, this kind of thing. If you could just touch briefly on that.
As far as interdimensional is concerned, I'm pretty much convinced that they use interdimensional space, so to speak, to go from point A to point B, to travel with. They use dimensions to keep themselves invisible. And I do know that in these interdimensional worlds, there are other life forms, other than what we would consider to be extraterrestrial. And at times in my experience, going from point A to point B, I felt that dimensions were used to go from the house to the craft and things of that nature for shorter trips. And I can't really tell you what these life forms are. They just look funny. Some of them look small. But there are dimensions, there are entities that take up these spaces, and yes, they use this as a tool. Okay, time travel to them is a common thing. And I've said this before, almost it's a technology as simple to them as having a remote control and turning on television and turning the TV on, TV off. It's an everyday thing with them. So yes, they can put themselves in different places in time.
And also the technology you were talking about, that we have our, if you like, parts of our brain are atrophied. But in the presence of their radiated energy or their radiated technology, it seems to trigger something in us so that we become a little more psychic. Is that right?
Yeah, you couldn't put that any better, because there's muscles in the mind, in my view, that lie dormant, and they activate those muscles, but they have to be exercised. So it took time for me to come along with it so I can respond back and forth. Again, you got to remember, and I've said this before, we're dealing with beings, and talking about the Greys in particular, that can think 10 to 100 times faster, who warehouse hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of thoughts all at the same time. So even if you have your telepathy down perfect, we're pretty much linear or one plane when we communicate back and forth, and you have a mind with all these things going on at the same time. But however, yes, I use the term muscles, for lack of a better one, in the brain or atrophied, and they do become more active. And yes, you become a bit more sensitive about perception. Your perception is heightened.
Yes.
And so one might say you're not necessarily a psychic, but your abilities are definitely better.
And you're able to interact with their technology. For example, your symbols in 3D, because the radiation is there, you can react and see it.
The technology is thought activated.
Yes.
It's wondrous, it's wonderful. I wish I could get full use of it, but I've had some.
Right.
But it is, no doubt, thought activated.
Bit of a tough question here. You obviously were at one point sitting on your couch, and the next minute you sort of teleported into some military base, where you ended up on a gurney, and at times you were both on the gurney and the couch, just sort of transposing between one and the other.
Right.
And you saw the military people around, and out of respect, you didn't really name them or look at their name tags, and even to this day you respect them as humans doing their jobs.
Right.
The big question, do you think there's a chance that these military people may have been hybrids, or do you think you lean more towards the notion that it must have been covert groups?
Well, you know, anything is possible here, okay? However, their mannerism was wholly human. And anybody that could be with me, if you were sitting next to me as you are right now, Neil, and you saw what I saw, and you saw how these people interacted and reacted, you would have no reason in your mind to say they're wholly human, they're wholly military, and perhaps some of them are contracted out who are civilians. So what I did see when that took place was an officer, a military officer, in a uniform that I figured to be unbeknownst to me. Okay, I can't say that it was Marines, I can't say it was the Navy, I can't say it was the Air Force, I can't say it was the Army, but there is a uniforms that they wear that look like I'm not sure which branch, but I can't connect a branch when I see them. There was an officer involved, and then there were men in their 20s. They appeared to be in their 20s or at best maybe low 30s, who wore white lab coats. And to clarify the tags, okay, the tags I couldn't really make anything out, and I wasn't trying to, but they looked like they were just a bit of like a different color. So whatever that meant, I was later told that in the onion of top secrecy and the different levels that. What tells you what clearance status you have. It's a different color tag. It's not a name, it's something very simple.
Right.
Blue might mean, you know, Bob, red might mean, you know, something else. Is that it? I don't know. But that's the way that looked to me. But the way they responded, the way they reacted, I had no other reason to think that they were anything other than human.
Okay. So we've discussed the spirituality, we've discussed some technology. How about the politics? The politics of the extraterrestrials. What is their agenda, or what are they trying to goad some of these covert groups into doing? What is the agenda? What are they up to?
Well, I was advised again that the covert groups, black ops, secret governments, secret agencies, whoever is connected at whatever different levels, possess the technologies necessary to save this world, and then some. There's technologies that exist that will take, and you've heard me say this before and I don't mind repeating it, they'll take the toxins out of the sea. They'll take the pollutants out of the air. They'll take the toxins and the pollutants and the garbage out of our soil. They'll give us the ability to travel. They'll give us the ability to not get sick. And I'm convinced that the species and beings that I deal with possess the knowledge of stop dying. And they no longer die. They've conquered death. I can't say that they can't get killed, but they have conquered death. And it doesn't take a rocket scientist to realize that if you can maintain your current alertness, your brain power, and utmost fittest condition physically, and feel good about your life every day without any diseases bothering you, and have that zeal as you would have in your prime,
right,
and your mental faculties sharpened at their best, and be able to take in data every day, every year, year after year, century after century, millennium after millennium. It doesn't take a rocket scientist to realize what would happen to you as far as your perception of the world and where you should go. So they want us to join, politically speaking, the galactic neighborhood. From what I can tell, again, in that frame, people are doing their own business. Species and beings are going about their own business. There's interaction, but if it comes to a crossroad, one respects the other, and they go on. They're not warring, they're not fighting, they're not killing, they're not competing in that nature.
I see. Okay.